Hey, good evening. It's August 16th, and I'm going to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order at 6:04. And we're going to go right to public comment. And before doing so, if you have any questions that the Board of Assessors might be able to answer during tonight, if you want to ask them during public comment, there won't be any public comment during their review of the residential tax exemption. It's just going to be for an overview for the selectmen at this time. So with that, I'll open up public comment. If any. All right. Oh, there's one. All right, Toby.
Thank God. Just kidding, Toby.
All right.
Thank you. Toby Arsenian, 95 Granite Street. I'm not sure whether it was at your last meeting or the one previous that I spoke about appointments to the Government and Bylaw Committee. And before you can tell me, I'll remind you that that's not your appointment. That's the appointing committee, the chair of the selectmen, the moderator, and the chair of the Finance Committee who get to make such appointments. I said that the appointment should take place concurrently with a Board of Selectmen's meeting so that the public would get a chance of meeting whoever is appointed, however you like, to the Government and Bylaw Committee. And you, Ross Brackett, agreed, I can't remember precisely the words, that would be a good and advisable thing. Of course, it's not in your power. You're one of three and not the chair of that committee. And I gather that my request will come to nothing, and that tomorrow at, I believe it's 10 a.m., the appointing committee is meeting and going to appoint Greg Quisted, if I pronounce it correctly, to the committee. Now, as I said before, I don't think the position was properly advertised, although it was on the town website. It was never announced as being open at any of your meetings, which would be, a good thing to do, necessary. I don't fault Mr. Quisted, who is certainly qualified and has actually read the bylaws, has some skills, will doubtless be useful. I fault the process. Apparently, the convenience of the appointing committee is more important than the public's right to know who is going to serve them. And I feel that that is deplorable.
Thank you, Toby. As far as I know, it's a public meeting tomorrow, so I'm not sure that people can still, I know it may not be the best time, but it's a time that works for all members. So we will definitely work on getting that. See if we can get into a selectmen's meeting next time. All right. Any more public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the interview and appointment for a full-time police officer. And we have the chief here to introduce him.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. I'm here to introduce one candidate for the position of full-time police officer with the Rockport Police Department. Mr. Daniel Roberts is a resident of Port Washington, New York, and is currently in the process of relocating to the North Shore of Massachusetts. Mr. Roberts is a police officer with the New York Police Department and has held the position since October of 2016. Prior to working in New York, Mr. Roberts served as a police officer with the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina Police Department, beginning his career there in April of 2007. He comes to us with more than 12 years of full-time police officer experience. Mr. Roberts is a decorated United States Marine Corps veteran. He has extensive training experience both through the military and his policing career to date that will benefit our police department and community. He has been described as honest, family-oriented, professional, reliable, an excellent officer, and a role model. Mr. Roberts is here and eager to speak with the board this evening. So I present to the board, Mr. Dan Roberts.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you for that introduction, Chief. Good evening, members of the board. Good evening, Chief. My name is Dan Roberts. I'm excited for this opportunity. Looking forward to the change. It's going to be a big lifestyle change, and that's the main reason I was looking to become a Rockport police officer, and I'm very excited to be here finally. It's been a long road.
All right, thank you, Dan. Any questions from the board? Selectman Murphy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome Officer Roberts. Just curious, what brings you to Rockport from New York City?
So the wife and I have been, we love the coastal towns. We love the kind of old school kind of towns. That's just something, even when we were in Myrtle Beach, we would go up to, or down to Charleston, and that was kind of an old world, beautiful homes, beautiful buildings. And that's kind of, so when we moved back to New York, New York's not quite what I remember from growing up. It's changed a lot. Being a police officer in New York has allowed me to see a lot more of New York than I ever could have expected. So the wife and I began looking to maybe, live the dream that we've had for a while, and that's to move to a small town, kind of that old school feeling, by the sea. And I think Rockport was perfect for that. So
That's great. And do you think that coming from New York with all that experience in New York City and coming to a very, at times, Rockport can be, and I mean this in a nice way, a sleepy town in the middle of February, it's February 22nd and a Tuesday, if you're doing the midnight to 8 shift, there's not going to be a heck of a lot of traffic going on. But how do you think you would adjust to, powering it down from New York City to Rockport PD?
I'm definitely ready for that. I'm getting older. 38 now, so.
Oh, that's old.
Yeah. So
I'm kidding.
So I have 3 kids now. I have 2 twins, 2 7-month-old twins. I have a 4-year-old boy. And I really would like to be more present, and I just kind of that slower lifestyle is definitely what I'm seeking right now.
Yeah, I just have one more question, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
I noticed that you have a red tie on. Is that something to do with the Red Sox, or what are we going to do here with the Red Sox?
Here we go. No, it doesn't. That's purely coincidence.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll work on that. Maybe we'll.
Either. I'm going to try and stick it out with the Yankees. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I'm open to it, though.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan, and welcome to Rockport.
Thank you.
Selectwoman Donnelly.
Yeah, I wouldn't make that public, Dan, that you're going to try.
Yep, I could play. I'm a Cowboys fan, football wise, so
I wouldn't make that public either.
Yep. I'll keep that hush hush.
You might want to stop talking. No. Welcome, and you're joining a great department with an excellent chief. You're really gonna, I think, enjoy the change. Where in New York, what were you doing in New York City?
So I work in the Brooklyn housing. So I'm in the Brooklyn North housing projects, and that's where I work day in and day out, patrolling the buildings and the developments. Yeah,
so this will be a big change for you.
Huge change, and I'm thrilled for it.
Have you had any luck looking for a place to live?
Yes, I actually just signed a lease for a place in Gloucester on Eastern Ave.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're super excited. It's where my son is already talking about which room's going to be his, so he's super excited. He's been packing last few days, just so
wonderful.
Really happy. Thank you.
Good luck with the move.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Selectwoman Wilkinson?
Sure, not really a question, but welcome, Officer Roberts. I know that the chief has obviously fully vetted you, and I saw your resume, which is extensive to say the least. I just love this story. I love that you're coming here and your family's excited. I do love to think that we are getting to live the dream here by the sea. So I'm excited to not only have you join us, but your family as well. So welcome.
Thank you so much. My son can't stop talking about Rockport and so he's super excited.
That's so cool.
One last question. What with all the experience you have, what impact do you hope to have on the Rockport Police Department?
I hope to have a very positive impact. I think I'm hoping to be that eventually that old man is driving around and both kids know, and everyone knows they can count on me to get the job done whatever minor complaint, I don't care, all the things that I've experienced and done. There's not much I haven't seen and I'm not prepared to attend to. So I'm hoping to be with this department for a long, long time and raise my kids in that area and just enjoy the rest of the ride.
All right. If there's no more questions from the board, I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, that's me. Hold on. I move that the board appoint Daniel Roberts as a full-time police officer effective September 4th, 2022.
I'll second that.
All right, roll call vote. Selectwoman Wilkinson,
Aye.
Selectman Murphy,
Aye.
Selectwoman Donnelly,
Aye.
and Selectman Brackett votes aye. Motion carries. Welcome aboard, Dan. Glad to see you. Hope to see you out there soon.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Next on our agenda, we have the Board of Assessors review of the residential tax exemption. And who do we have here tonight, Mitch?
Mr. Chair, you have the Chair of the Board of Assessors, Tim Good, and Principal Assessor Liz Dukes.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Tim Good and myself are here, and we're just I'm going to share my screen with everyone. Selectmen, you should have the PowerPoint presentation in your packet. So hopefully you've reviewed it, but if not, we're going to just go through it. Feel free to ask some questions, and then Tim will weigh in at the end. So let's see if I can share this. Okay. So understanding the residential exemption. First off, sorry, excuse me. So the residential exemption, it was enacted in 1979, and it's an option under, MGL that it basically shifts the tax burden within the residential class. From owners of moderately valued residential properties to owners of vacation homes, higher valued homes, and residential properties not occupied by the owner. And that also includes apartments and vacant land. So just briefly, how does it work? So all of our residential class is classified as class 1. They are the principal residents of taxpayers. Prior to the Municipal Modernization Act, the exemption could not exceed 20% of the average assessed valuation. Currently, since the Municipal Modernization, it's up to 35% of the average assessed value of all class 1 residential properties.
So can you just, Liz, if you wouldn't mind, explain what that means?
So, yeah, so you take all of our 101s, 102s, anything that has a class of 1 is residential. So those classes would be taxed, it can exceed a 35% of the assessed values. So you would take a 35% of all of those class 1, of the value of the class 1. So basically it's going to, and I'll get into it a little bit more, but the levy stays the same. So the amount that we have to collect is going to remain the same, but the burden is going to shift within the residential class.
Mhm.
So people of higher valued homes are going to be paying a higher tax rate essentially.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll keep going and
Okay. How does it work? Continued. Adopting a residential tax exemption, it increases the residential rate. Like I said, the amount of the tax levy that we see that is agreed upon in our certification is going to stay the same. But because of the exempted residential value, the levy it's distributed over the assessed value. So for example, we in the classification hearing, we often vote to see if we're going to shift between a commercial rate and the residential rate. This is keeping it all in the residential. We typically don't adopt that shift for the commercial,
right.
industrial, personal property. We have one tax rate, but this is specific to just the residential class. This higher rate would create a shift within the class that reduces the tax paid by homeowners of moderately valued properties. Those taxes are then paid by non-owner occupied residential properties. So people that do not occupy their resident full time. These are all estimated numbers, but this kind of shows you how it's calculated. So you would take your total, you can see these. I'm going to go into the formula in a minute here, but these are your total residential value um, with your total residential parcel count, and then that gives you the average residential value. So you'll see in a minute that Rockport is roughly around, what was it, 10.6? You have it in front of you.
Not yet.
Rockport's average assessment is 629,810, just to give you an idea. So let's take a look. So here's the formula. If you could take those previous numbers and kind of plug them in, and this is how the second rate is the higher rate at which the higher income values, the non-owner occupieds are taxed at. Like I said, the total tax levy will remain the same. So the property tax burden shifts again to those non-owner occupied or those higher income, higher valued, I'm sorry. The break-even point, this is an important part. The break-even point is where the assessed value of a parcel without any exemption is where it's neutral. So you'll start to see anything below the break-even point is going to, you'll see in my next example, it's going to be critical to this. So in this example, the 941,176, that's the assessed value where the increase will begin to happen. All right, so in Rockport, this is using our numbers. And we estimated, these are all estimated on FY22 numbers. So, and we basing it on 65% would be eligible for this exemption. And that, again, that's just an estimate. So total value of the residential class, which is class 1, is this number right here. And again, we're estimating based on 65% of people would be eligible. So our tax rate for FY22 is $9.82 per 1,000. Currently, we have 3,864 parcels in the residential class. So if we divide all of that, you come up with the 629,810. That's the average assessment. And again, I'm estimating 2,500 parcels would qualify. So the following illustrates what would happen to the taxes if the tax rate was proposed at the maximum 35% residential exemption. So you take the average assessment times that 0.35, and this is the exemption amount. I rounded to 2,400. So this is the amount that would come off of the value for the people that have qualified. So then again, we take that exempted amount times the eligible parcels. And this is how much value is going to be exempted from the residential class, this 551 million in value. Based on this, our original value minus the exempted value, you come up with this number. And then this is the levy based on FY22, and then multiplied times the 0.9476, which is the class 1 with the residential percentage that's responsible for the levy. This is multiplied by, divided by this new value times 1,000. That gives you your new tax rate. So if this was to take place at the 35%, we have our current tax rate at $9.82, and then the people that don't qualify would be taxed at this $12.03. So I think Tim and I figured out it's about a 23% increase in our tax rate, which is pretty significant. So does anyone have any questions based on that? And I also provided a breakdown of qualified versus unqualified, just to give you an idea. I just proposed starting at $300,000 value, how you can see what the tax change. I know everybody else doesn't have this available, but the selectmen, that was also in your packet. So based on those numbers, does anyone have any questions? Tim's going to chime in here in a minute with just the Board of Assessors opinion on some of this.
Selectwoman Donnelly?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. I'm still not completely following this. I think I am, but I'm not completely sure I follow. I have a couple questions. How do you determine which properties get the higher tax rate?
That's right. So in order to qualify, you must be owner occupied. So that's a challenge within itself. We would have to do a, and in other towns that have adopted this, they have to provide tax returns. They would have to provide proof of voter registration, motor vehicle excise to prove that they are actually owner occupied. So that number, that 2,500 parcels is definitely an estimate. We did our numbers based on people that have a Rockport address versus an out of town address. So that's where these numbers are coming from. But in order to qualify, you have to be an owner occupied.
So that's an additional administrative burden on the assessor's office.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing is to provide all of that paperwork, but say they're missing something and tax bills go out at the point that they are not providing us with that information, it then goes into an abatement process, which is a lot of administrative work after the fact.
And what about people who've, kind of lived in their home for a while and the home has increased in value significantly simply because property values have gone up so much?
Sure.
And, they've lived in Rockport for a very long time, but they are going to be subject to this
Absolutely.
higher tax rate.
Yeah, we call it, house rich, cash poor. If someone has lived in their family home since 1950 and, I've been hanging on and trying to make ends meet and barely making it. As we all know, values unfortunately are just going to continue to increase if you've been paying attention to the market. So it's going to be problematic.
So this is intended to be more equitable, but it's not going to end up that way in all cases.
Right.
That would be correct.
I'll jump in here.
And I'll
for a
let Tim.
In terms of equitable, I would tend to disagree with that. This was originally enacted back when the state decided to go to full and fair market value. And it was one of the mechanisms put into place to ease potential sticker shock for communities that had placed a large amount of the tax burden on commercial properties and industrial properties versus residential, not by way of tax rate, which it can be done today, but in terms of how they valued the properties. So when they made the switch to full and fair market value, that would have created a significant increase for the residential class of properties. And this was one of the ways that was put in to potentially mitigate some of that. So, I mean, theoretically, if you're in a full and fair market value state and your taxes are based on the value of your property, equitable is everybody pays the same rate based on their value without this type of manipulation.
Mhm.
Any other questions from the board? Selectman Murphy.
No, I'm digesting this whole thing right
So
now.
the breakpoint you have on, is this just an estimate too? The valuation?
You're muted.
Yeah, Liz. Kind of sorry to shake her head, but Monty or Mitch, if you're gonna mute her.
So
Go ahead, Tim.
am I
Yeah.
okay? So the break-even point, that's a calculation based on the assumptions that we put in terms of number of eligible parcels, et cetera. That is the point where if your property is worth more than that, whether it is your principal residence or your second home, doesn't matter. Anybody whose property is valued higher than that break-even point pays more money with the higher tax rate, even if they qualify for the exemption.
Right.
So you get the exemption, but because the tax rate is so much higher, you still pay more money. And you can see on Liz's sheet, once you get past that break-even point, both with and without exemption are plus figures.
Sorry, I was muted before, but at the break-even point, based on our estimates, is $965,000 of assessed value. Just to give everyone an idea.
Do you have any, I'm sorry, may I? Mr.
Yep. Go ahead, Stefan.
Do you have any idea the number of homes in Rockport that fall into that category at 965 or above?
Yep, so we did some quick numbers. You have that in front of you, Tim, the 320.
We didn't do 965. We did a nice round 1 million. And there are 367 homes with a value over $1 million. 136 of those have an out-of-town mailing address. 231 have local. So about 63% of the people with the homes of that value have a local mailing address versus out of town.
And I'll just, I guess from my perspective, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I'll just add, it's not hard to get above that number these days in Rockport, even if you have a modest home. I mean, it's kind of crazy what the property values have what's happened with them recently in the last year, actually 2 years, I would say. So it's not unusual. I'm surprised there aren't more homes that are falling above that number. That's the assessed value, right? Not the market value. Yeah.
Well, hopefully those are pretty close.
Hard to keep up.
Yes.
I have a couple. Can I ask a couple
Yep.
questions? Great. This is super helpful, you guys. Can we go back to the slide that has the break-even point?
Absolutely. It's actually not on the.
Was
not
it on
this
one of the
slide? Let me try and pull up my sheet here that
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. So the way I understand this, and I tried to study some other cities and towns that do this, and like Tim said, I think it's really important that people know that even if you live in the home full time, if you are above the break-even point, you pay the higher tax rate. There's no exemption, right, at all for that. Okay. So what happens if you have a home that's, say, valued over, we'll just say $1 million, right, for conversation's sake, valued over $1 million, and you rent part of it out? You live in part, but rent part of it out. Do you know the situation there?
Well, you're saying, so if it's your domicile, but you rent part of it out.
Yeah, my guess is that you could, well, I mean, if it's over $1 million, you still pay the higher tax rate, I would assume, because then it doesn't matter.
The thing is that everybody is, regardless of value, is paying the higher tax rate. It's just below that value point, you get the exemption off the assessed value. So
Right.
even though you're paying a higher rate, you're saving money.
Exactly. Okay, got
So
it.
everybody pays that same rate.
Yes, got it. And then I think it's really interesting because I think people aren't, I mean, and then I assume what's really common is if you own a home, whether it's, multifamily, or own a home and it's not your principal residence, and you do either a winter rental or own it and rent it, that, you would most likely, I mean, my husband and I rented for years, and you would most likely pass the increase in tax off to your rent to your tenants. I mean, unfortunately, I think that's what happens.
Mhm.
Right.
Which is unfortunate. I mean, I guess my view on this is maybe too simplistic, but I look at it similarly to how we look at when we discuss, the residential and commercial, and that, this is a small town. We aren't a big city or even a big town, where the spread is so big that small changes have small effects. I think, like, even here, even small changes have big effects. And, and to me, it really is a matter of equality. And even people who don't live here year round, like, contribute just as much as to the town as those of us who do, you know what I mean? It's like a small ecosystem here. And it just seems strange to me that, that my neighbor's house could be assessed, just a little bit more than mine, and they're being taxed 20, what did you say? Close to 25% more than I am.
23%. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems crazy to me. So this is really helpful. I think what would be great, last year, and I know similarly when we've done the overrides, we've put like a website or something on the town website that has, like the formula where you can, would I,
Sure.
like, what would I pay? Would I be exempt? I wonder if it's easy enough to do like a Google sheet or something. Or people can also just reach out to you and ask, but the questions that even we've asked, I see people asking online and getting kind of confusing answers. But the simplest answer is, if you're above the break even point, you're going to pay a higher tax rate no matter what.
Absolutely.
And your residential tax rate is actually going to be higher than what's charged to commercial and industrial properties. One other point I'd make is there are only 16 communities out of 351 taxable entities that have chosen to enact this exemption. So it doesn't seem to be something that makes a lot of sense in most places.
Yeah, it seems well intentioned, but it's like everything else, right? The devil's in the details. And
Yeah,
it's
and
not like
you're
the state
basically
gave us a
having
break.
Yeah, and you're basically having other residential taxpayers pay a portion of your tax. That's what it's coming down to.
Right.
Yeah.
What happens when there's commercial and residential mixed in one building? How is that categorized?
Well, right now, in Rockport, because we've always done a single tax rate, there's no difference. But what would happen would be, you would have to, with a split rate, you'd have to come up and calculate the portion that's residential, the portion that's commercial, allocate the value into two separate categories, and apply the proper tax rate to those two numbers.
Wow.
The 35% is high too. Of those 16, there's only 4 that are at the 35.
And then how about
Correct.
to qualify? You're not just gonna say people don't just qualify out of the blue. You have to go through a process, I'm assuming. And that could be a burden on some of our older population if they had to come in
Absolutely.
and go through a process with you guys.
Yeah, it's you know, like any exemptions that's received, you know, it's tax returns, financial, you know, proof of registration to vote in town, motor vehicle excise paid here. So it's kind of a check off, you know, and like I said, if they don't get that in time and tax bills are due, then at that point it flips over to an abatement situation where now the town is paying them, you know, if that's approved.
Yeah. Oh, one other question. Is if when a community does shift to this, is the break even point calculated each year?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
the
because the
tax
values
rate?
are always changing.
So it could change. I mean, it could theoretically change. I mean, you know, I guess if you were to like take a look at the last 3 years, right? My guess is it would be a big change.
Absolutely. Yeah. These FY23 values, and you know, unfortunately, I think we're going to see some significant increases in values just based on market. So,
Right.
so those numbers will change.
Yeah. So this is something that would have to be gone, you know, like the tax rate gone through every year and then abatements and the whole process.
Yeah.
Interesting. Super helpful. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah. And feel free to call if you have questions or.
Any other questions from the board? If not, we'll let them get back to work. Selectwoman Donnelly is, if we can unmute her, just in case. I think she's all set though.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thanks.
Nice to
Yeah,
see
as
you guys.
As Liz said, any other questions that come up in the meantime, certainly let us know, and you know, make sure you have the information you need.
All right, thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
a good presentation,
you.
so I learned a lot.
Thank you guys.
Bye,
Nice to
guys.
see you.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All
Good
right.
night.
Next on our agenda, we have a status and timeline for the Conservation Commission, which is a hot topic, and I'll turn that over to Mitch so we can talk over what we've been discussing.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just an update on moving forward. So 2 separate issues going on. There was the agent vacancy and then matters relating to the commission. For the agent vacancy, we had a very qualified candidate that we were in final talks with, and that individual ended up backing out. So that sent us back to square one, unfortunately. The position was immediately reposted, and there have been some additional applicants who've come in. It's still in the early vetting phase of that. Fortunately, a lot of the applicants, the experience is just not there that's necessary. So we're continuing to try to find the perfect fit or as close to it as possible, but trying to still be realistic on what we can offer. But unfortunately, that person backed out, so that sent us back to square one. Significant challenge, not having the agent here and a person for people to call. So we continue through the re-interview process as we make our way along. So switching over to the commission. So as has been previously discussed, there are personnel issues related here. I think in previous meetings, some individuals may have conflated the two things. So there is a personnel issue with having a vacancy for an agent, and there are personnel issues related specifically to the commission and members associated with that. A portion of that was in the newspaper, and a portion of that is operating, just known internally that we're working to address. So we are in the process of likely at the end of this week for next week, some conversations with some of the remaining members to see if we can address some of the issues that are still pending. Then I would recommend that at your next meeting, you start the interview process to refill the commission. And council will act as a facilitator for the first few meetings once the commission is reestablished, to ensure that it is moving forward and that it has the expertise available to it to properly advise and to make sure that it's staying in an area that it needs to as it moves forward. The board liaison, Selectman Lilia, will also be an active participant in that particular area. And everyone will be required. Certainly, I've had this discussion with all the applicants, and I will recommend to the board when the time comes that you require it of the current members as well. Everyone complete the Conservation Commission training within a year in an attempt to reset and get that going. So that is our plan moving forward. We need to still fix the issues, two separate personnel issues. That's the extent that I'll get into those particular pieces in this forum, though.
Blackbone Wilkinson.
Yeah, just thanks so much, Mitch. This is really helpful. I think unfortunately it wasn't the town that went to the paper. So I'm not, so obviously the paper covered part of it, part of the story that they got from someone. I'm not totally sure who, but obviously not the full story. But I just want to thank you for all of your efforts. I know that probably combined multiple board members along with Mitch have been working. It's honestly been like a huge percentage of your work between trying to find an agent, the personnel issues on the commission, dealing with town council, and trying to make heads or tails of everything that was pending with the commission when we lost the quorum. So I just wanted to thank you for all of your efforts. And I think this is a great plan moving forward.
Blackbone Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I concur with Selectman Wilkinson's comments. This is almost like two things colliding at once. I'm just curious, is other municipalities that you're aware of in your experience, Mitch, going through situations like this, or is this just a situation that happened here in Rockport?
So for the agent hiring, it's a challenge, and that's that's a very specialized role. There are other vacancies certainly, and everybody's.
That's what I meant, that part.
Yeah, so everybody's competing for that same very, very small pool of qualified individuals. So that's a challenge. We have a very streamlined hiring process for that. It is in process, reviewed, move forward for pre-screening. So we move very quickly on that because we recognize that we can't wait on hiring actual candidates. They're gone. We're not in a day where we could wait 3 or 4 weeks. So we continue to be as diligent as we can, but hiring in general is a challenge. And as you look at specialized roles like this one, that's certainly even more of a challenge. Okay.
And is the salary an issue? Is the salary competitive? I guess that would be my question.
The salary is competitive. It is within the range that's competitive.
Okay, good.
And just to clarify, the interview process won't only be 1 or 2 candidates. We're not moving forward with the whole whole bunch of candidates we have in line. We're gonna work through the process as we work with the personnel issue as well. So I just want to
Well,
make sure that's cleared.
Who will recommend? Trader?
What was that? Yeah,
Who
you were-
will, Mitch, will you be recommending to the board?
So I've interviewed all of the current applicants, and my suggestion to you would be take them in the order they applied.
Okay,
All right. Any other questions for Mitch?
Nope. Thank you.
All right, we'll be moving on to the consent agenda, which is approval of minutes, if any, seasonal position appointments, 4R Old County Road transfer of ownership and notice of lease, 61 Long Beach family transfer of ownership, and 12 Long Beach change of address. And do I have a motion for that?
You certainly do. Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Selectmen approve all the consent agenda. I was going to say non-held items, but consent agenda.
And do I have a second?
I'll second that.
And can I get Selectwoman Wilkinson unmuted, please? All right, roll call vote. Selectwoman Wilkinson,
Aye.
Selectman Murphy,
Aye.
Selectman Loya,
Aye.
and Selectwoman Donnelly,
Aye.
and Selectman Brackett votes aye. Motion carries. On to our action list, and we have consider approval of 4 Old County Road rebuild, which I think you've all seen in your packet.
Mhm. Would you like a
Uh,
motion for this?
Yeah, I'll take a motion.
Sure. Mr. Chair, I move that the board approve the request for Old County Road to be rebuilt as specified on the plans presented at this meeting and in compliance with the Long Beach regulations.
And do we have anyone here, Mitch, to talk about it?
Yes, Jonathan Weaver is the architect. He is present.
Alrighty. How you doing, Jonathan?
Hi,
Yep, you're unmuted.
hi. Yeah, essentially the 4 Old County Road is on the third row, as it were, immediately adjacent to Gloucester. It's so for it to have any ocean view at all, it needs to have the second floor put back in. Currently, it is 2 floors. It has a full basement that was rentable at one point. It isn't currently. And as such, what we're going to do is basically raise the whole structure up to above flood line, put in a new pier system, and obviously stay within the height and all the other requirements, but without expanding it in any way.
Any questions from the board? Selectwoman Donnelly?
So it'll retain its current footprint, Jonathan?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And
The,
what kind- Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So the building inspector has done his review, his memo, I believe is in your packet.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is in compliance with your regulations regarding footprint and height.
Perfect.
So no other questions? I'll
Nope.
move on to roll call. All right, thank you, Jonathan. Roll call vote. Selectman Murphy,
Aye.
Selectman Loya,
Aye.
Selectwoman Donnelly,
Aye, and I don't know if there was a second to the motion.
Mitch, do you recall?
I don't, if somebody wants to be the
All right,
second.
well,
you can
someone's the
redo-
second.
I'll
redo your
second.
vote. Redo
All
your
right.
vote if you could.
Yep. And it's been seconded by Selectwoman Donnelly, and roll call vote. Selectman Murphy,
Aye.
Selectman Loya,
Aye.
Selectwoman Donnelly,
Aye.
and Selectman Brackett votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And next we have place articles and approve fall town meeting warrant. And we'll pass
Thank
it
you,
over to
Mr.
Mitch.
Chair. The warrant closed last Wednesday. We immediately gathered all the articles, forwarded them to town council, and they have completed their review as of this morning. So we have articles A through N for your consideration this evening. There was one article relating to a change to the ad hoc water committee charge that came back with some legal issues. I'm meeting tomorrow with 2 members of that group to discuss that, to get that sorted, to be able to move forward in the future. That is not included in the list at this time. We are meeting tomorrow, though, to get that sorted out. Article A is prior year bills. B is the standard transfers article. C is the CPC report. Hear and accept. D is to do the deposits into each of the required funds for Community Preservation Act. E is the projects. There are 8 projects from CPC. And those projects are $40,000 to study options for the restoration, rehabilitation, and preservation of Bradley Wharf. This is related to motif number 1 and the significant undermining that's happening over there. This is the engineering study for that. $239,000 for the restoration, rehabilitation, and preservation of the Evans Field, particularly including the bleachers and the seating area. $31,800 for the restoration, rehabilitation, and preservation of the historic freight crane over at the railroad station, and to enhance the safety, historic integrity, and appearance of the crane and its immediate surroundings. $46,000 is a grant to Sandy Bay Historical Society for the restoration, rehabilitation, and historic preservation of the blacksmith shop at the old castle. $140,000 is a grant to Harbor Light Community Partners for affordable housing at 5 Granite Street. $150,000 for the restoration, rehabilitation, and historic preservation of the exterior of the Pigeon Cove Fire Station. This is additional funding to get that project over the finish line. 7th is $100,000 to Thatcher and Straits Smith Island Town Committee for restoration, rehabilitation, and preservation of the South Tower on Thatcher Island. And the 8th and final is $334,000 as a grant to the Rockport Baptist Church for the restoration, rehabilitation, and preservation of the steeple on the church building. Article F is contract, first-year contract wage approvals for the 2 collective bargaining agreements that we're finalizing negotiations on shortly, both of our AFSCME units. G is the residential exemption, non-binding citizens petition. Again, the determination on that lies with the selectmen. This is a get a flavor of town meeting. H through N are all related to the Government and Bylaw Committee and their submissions based on the work that they have been doing. H is the name change for the Board of Selectmen to Select Board. The article would change the Code of Bylaws, the zoning bylaws, and also authorize the selectmen to petition the state legislature to formalize the name in the charter. I is the group edits submitted for Chapter 1 of the Code of Bylaws. J is Chapter 2 edits. K is Chapter 3. L is Chapter 7. M would be to authorize the Government and Bylaw Committee in the course of their ongoing review to standardize citations for state and federal laws, to update and correct state, federal, local agency names. There's a lot of that that's fairly housekeeping that needs to be done and that they're in the process of doing with their review. This is a general authorization for that. And N is also from Government and Bylaw. We did this type of article for the zoning bylaws as well. This would authorize the Government and Bylaw Committee during their review to make any grammatical, punctuation, syntax, general corrections of a non-substantive nature to the Code of Bylaws as they work their way through. So it would not require coming to town meeting to change the punctuation on something that was incorrect. This would be an authorization for them to make that correction and to report back throughout their review at the town meeting, but for them to make that correction without further need to bring period, semicolons, and dashes back to town meeting. The committee has been very diligent in their review of this, so they are ready and prepared to walk you through all of those. The 4 chapters, 1, 2, 3, and 7, they spent considerable amount of time on. The other chapters are held at this time. They are working to continuing to make edits. There are some legal matters that are pending on some, and some are just not ready. There's a lot of this. They're fairly complex. That is it for the warrant as submitted.
All right. Thank you. And if I'll take a motion now, and then we can get to questions if you have any.
Hey, yes, Mr. Chair, I have a motion. I move that the board place all articles on the September 12th, 2022 Fall Town Warrant, meeting warrant. Set the start time for the meeting at 5:30 PM and direct the town administrator to prepare the final document for board signatures and posting.
I'll second that.
Do you have any questions for Mitch?
So just quickly, what do we think? Long meeting or? Tough
I
to
never like
tell?
to guess. I never like to guess because I jinx it and it's never helpful. So this is a lot of articles for a Monday night meeting.
That's what I
I
figured.
would leave it at that probably.
Don't
Yeah.
jinx us, Paul.
I know, yeah. It'll be in the auditorium though, correct?
It's in the gymnasium.
Gymnasium, okay.
If there's no other further questions, roll call vote. Selectwoman Wilkinson,
Aye.
Selectman Murphy,
Aye.
Selectman Lilia,
Aye.
Selectwoman Donnelly,
Aye.
and Selectman Brackett votes aye. Motion carries. All right, thank you for that, Mitch. And with that, we'll move on. If you want to stay there, Mitch, and if you have any updates for us.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, thank you. The significant item that we've been focusing on in addition to town meeting, I'm just going to pull up my info on it here, is the Woodland Acres fire. So first I want to start, and we said this in our update last night, but I want to make a point to start with it this evening. A special thanks to our first responders, forest fire, ambulance, police, for their ongoing efforts. They are getting called out multiple times a day, and at night. Sometimes they get out there and okay, it's an hour or so smoke conditions, and other times they get out there and it's really going in a particular area. So special thanks again to them for their ongoing efforts to handle this area, and to the Department of Conservation and Recreation, their forest fire staff. They have been our subject matter experts, and we rely very heavily in a partnership with them on this matter. So we started yesterday, moving forward while the fire is still active. We'll be doing twice a week updates. It'll be on our official social media accounts on the town website. And we will do an email and a text message code red. We will not be doing calls for this. We're very cognizant about when we're calling people. And for the updates, it will not be phone calls. We continue to, again, monitor this. The Forest Fire Department and DCR are multiple times a day walking the area, checking it out days, evenings, and assessing it. The area is continuing to see a lot of smoke, significant amount of smoke. And unfortunately, that's something that is going to continue to happen. If we do get some rain tomorrow, that would be beyond outstanding for a variety of reasons, certainly for this fire, but our water supply desperately needs some rain. That will produce more smoke tomorrow. So smoke conditions certainly are something that are going to be a constant until it is out. The DPW was on site today, and we'll be back again likely tomorrow, assisting to make the area more accessible. So the state forestry folks came in and needed to clear out a number of trees to form the fire break or to enhance the fire break. But they left, stumps. They were getting in, clearing out the material. The stumps have been a significant challenge for us to get the trucks closer. We've gone through a couple of sets of tires on our forest fire vehicles. So DPW is going in and getting those stumps out of there. And they're also spending time opening up the canopy. So there are a number of trees that are arching over either the roadways or the breaks that are in place. And to avoid the ability of the fire jumping, if there's a flare up to the other side of the break, they're trying to open a good pathway up for that and maintain that. So they are working in partnership with our public safety folks on that matter. We are in the process of securing the National Guard to come in later this week to assist with addressing hotspots. So what that would entail is they utilize their equipment to locate hotspot areas. And it's as simple as they find it, they dig that spot out until you reach it, and you just flood it with water. So, and then you move on to the next one. So we had a meeting this afternoon with State Forestry and the Forest Fire Warden and our Emergency Management Director, Chief Horvath. He has been in communication virtually and in person all afternoon with MEMA. A request was submitted through MEMA for the National Guard assistance today. So they will likely be here at the end of the week. Once that's processed, we will certainly put a notification out once we confirm their arrival.
How many do we anticipate would be coming down, National Guard people?
Full crew is 14 people.
Okay. Where are they
They're-
coming out of? Down Pete's?
Otis Air Force Base.
Otis, okay, good.
So they're a specially trained crew. They will be under the supervision of the Forest Fire Warden and the state DCR staff. As the state forestry warden described it today, they'll set up a grid and they will just methodically work their way forward along, starting particularly on the line area that is adjacent to woodland. That's closest to home. So anything that we can do to be sure that we're enhancing the break along that edge, we'll be doing. So they'll be here. If the work's done in one day, great. We expect that it'll take 2, so we've requested 2 per MEMA's instructions, and they'll be housed in town, and we'll have them likely a second day. So while we're here, while we're going through that, there will not be the plan for the DPW water main project was to convert to the temporary pipes for woodland on Thursday. That will not be happening until at the earliest next week. We will not be making any adjustments of that nature while we are actively addressing this over the next few days with the National Guard, when we're continuing to monitor if we need to make any other timing adjustments. That project has not, and I want to stress this because there's a lot of information floating out there, has not hindered or the ability to address the forest fire to date, and nor will we allow a project like that to do so.
Selectwoman Donovan?
Yeah, Mitch, a question. Would you please address why we are not doing helicopter drops of water? I thought that Patty Kluge-Tucker did a really good job explaining that online this weekend, but I think
Sure.
it would be helpful to hear from you that it's not because of the expense.
It is not. So we revisited that again today. I think Chief Horvath revisited that specifically today with the DCR state warden. And, really 2 big reasons. One, it takes a lot of water, and we're not necessarily looking for the surface water here. But the most significant issue is the downdraft from the helicopter, and the concern with getting low enough to the ground, the downdraft from that, pushing the embers out into areas that are outside of the containment area or restarting another issue. So it is not something, the state was very clear, it is not something that they are recommending at this time for the fire. It's simply not something that's on their radar for it. It is not related to funding. Certainly, if there was a funding need, we would find the money. Plain and simple, it's a public safety matter. It is
So-
not because of money.
Thank you. So it would actually make the fire worse, not better.
That is the instruction and the determination from the state fire warden.
Great, thank you.
And it is not, there have been also some comparators with, this is exactly like Poles Hill. It is not. I'm not qualified to make the assessment on the differences, but they've been very clear that it is not an exact match.
Okay, thank you very much.
Selectwoman Wilkinson?
Yeah, thanks so much, Denise, for asking to clarify that. I actually took a little time last night to read through Patty Kluge-Tucker's comments, as well as a few other people's were so on point, but there is just an incredible amount of rumor and misinformation on Facebook.
Yeah.
I know in the past couple days we have, and I know that Mitch has set a schedule for releasing public information that will come from our office, and that will also be shared by the police and the DPW. I did a post this morning, just kind of reminding people how to stay on top of town events on Facebook and on the town website. And people can, I say this to people all the time, we are all really accessible. People text me questions all day, they call me, they email me, and I know that we are all accessible like that. But I think it's really, really important that people know that there is nothing we aren't doing because of money regarding the fire at this point. Like you said, if the, you know, if the forest fire warden in the state said we should be doing the helicopter drops, like we would find a way, like we will find a way to fund whatever they believe is necessary. And I think it's important that people hear that. And, you know, and our office is working really hard and has set a schedule for getting information out. But please, I beg people to like come to the sources to get information. Please don't just scroll through, you know, social media and hope to see, you know, hope to find good comments. Because unfortunately, it's just what is being shared is not always accurate.
And I would add,
Well-intentioned, but not accurate.
yes, and I'd add to that, Selectwoman Wilkinson, our first responders know what they're doing. Give them the benefit of the doubt. They know what they're doing.
And let them do their jobs.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing is there are also, unfortunately, lots of other emergencies that happen in town. And I'll try, you know, I try my best to post things on social media. Like last night, I know people were nervous, you know, after there was a music at the beach concert, and then there were a lot of sirens, and people, you know, jumped to the conclusion that the fire had sparked up, and there were lots of posts. And I quickly said, listen, it's another, you know, it was actually an issue at a home. And I kind of got on top of that. But, you know, unfortunately, there are sirens for lots of different types of emergencies. We will, you know, do our best to try to get accurate information out there, obviously while respecting people's privacy. But if you're nervous about something, you know, you can always call the police non-emergency number. If it's just, you know, for information, hey, are the sirens I'm hearing related to the fire? Or reach out to one of us. We're happy to help at any time.
Selectman Leah, did you have something?
Yes, Mitch has spoken at length. I'm expressing our gratitude for the services of the Forest Fire Department. I would like to reemphasize that Forest Fire Department, the Fire Department, the Ambulance Service, and the state that has come in. I want to go further and say that to simply say that we need to thank the individuals in the ranks of these groups does not approach the appreciation we should receive. They should receive rather for the hours of work provided over multiple days and often more than once in a single day. The impact of fighting a forest fire on days in 90-degree weather has an impact on their physical well-being that cannot be appreciated unless directly observed. It is to be remembered that these men and women are volunteers with solid employment elsewhere. They must meet the need of both the demands with energy and enthusiasm, even though they can be called day or night to respond to the next flare up at Woodland Acres or elsewhere. There have been those in the general public who have expressed concern about the impact of the fires, specifically the smoke it might have on their health. However, these individuals can close their windows or relocate if they need to avoid the smoke. This is not the case with those who are fighting the fires. I've observed them as they've come home after their efforts on the fire scene. Their skin is black from the experience. They smell of where they've been. All they want is nothing more than a hot shower and rest. Most of you would not do their work under any circumstances, but you should ever be mindful of the fact that they are willing, and by what they do, they are protecting you. Thank you.
Thank you, Selectman Leah. Any other updates from the board? Or Mitch, you have anything else?
That's it for the time being, Mr. Chair.
Alrighty, if there's no other updates, Selectman Murphy.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say what a wonderful Saturday evening illumination night. It went well. I know collectively we're all holding our breath, rightfully so, because of the drought situation. But my understanding is that close to 10,000 people came into town, and I hope that translated into a lot of business for the folks downtown. Again, it was well done. Tim and Sue Collins do a terrific job. Selectman Donnelly and I read books to kids early, and Chief Horvath and State Senator Bruce Tarr and a few other people. So it was a day-long event, and it's unique to Rockport, which I think is great. And but just a tip of the hat to everyone who helped put together such a terrific event.
All right, we'll move on to public comment, if any. I see Nathaniel raising his hand. We can get him on mute if you can see him.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Brackett, for this opportunity to speak. In discussing the conservation agent and the conservation commission, two questions came up. You, Mr. Vieira, perhaps can elaborate on them or perhaps answer the question in that a list was made or referred to as qualified people are hard to find. I'm paraphrasing, forgive me, but what are the exact qualifications that Rockport is looking for in their conservation agent? And in terms
The
of,
position's been posted on the website for quite a while. It's all listed there.
yeah, I saw that, but it seems that there are many people who are qualified for that. And in terms of the Conservation Commission, I'm struggling to understand if when I was the director of research and development at Emerson, I had 1,200 employees under me. If I had trouble with 4 or 5 employees, I would not hold up hiring other employees until I resolved the issues with those other those already employed people. I would keep the factory going, I would keep the process going and fill the vacancies as quickly as possible. Could you help me understand why issues with people who are already on Concom need to be dealt with before the vacancies can be filled?
I'll take it real quick because we have a quorum that needs to be met. If the problem persists, we put someone on. The quorum 1%, you know, the issue continues, someone drops out, we lose quorum again. So that's as simply as that. It's not as simple as hiring an employee or firing an employee. You know, there needs to be reasons, you know, and again, we're working on it. Like we said, we're moving forward at, you know, our next meeting. So with that, I'll go over to Toby.
Thank you. Toby Arsenian, 95 Granite Street. With regard to the fire, Sarah Wilkinson spoke of the spread of rumor and misinformation on social media and by other means. Certainly the same will be true of the proposition for changing the tax rate. It was certainly helpful to hear the assessor, the professional assessor, and Tim Good. But I'm still not quite clear about all of it, although I feel I know more. I don't feel I'm on top of it. I have the sense that you, the board, are in the same position, knowing more but not being 100% clear. Perhaps I'm mistaken, but certainly the public needs to know more, and it would be greatly to the advantage of the town and the town meeting, if we could have a public presentation of all of it at a public hearing. And I would suggest that if you decide to do that, you would start with a presentation from the petitioners, hold them to 10 minutes, is what you get as a chief presenter at an article at the town meeting, and then hear from the assessors, hear from the town's financial officers, Carrie Arnaud, hear from the Finance Committee, any of the other assessors who wish to chime in, and get as much information out there beforehand with the whole presentation of the PowerPoint and all of this, you know, before the town meeting, rather than have all of the misinformation whirl about beforehand and come crashing down on the town meeting floor. Will you please consider that? And could I have a response?
I think that's a great idea, and I'll see what I can get together, see if we can get something put together for that. And see what it would take.
Thank you.
All right, Z.
Yes, Z Seppala, 92 Granite Street. I'm very sorry that the assessors and the public comment was taken before the assessors made their pitch instead of afterwards. But I'll say what I think I heard from in simplified terms. If this residential exemption goes into effect, the tax rates will change from $9.26 to $12.03. The 35% of the town that is non-residents that have these houses will pay the $12.03. The 35%, the 65% remaining will pay, if they're over the average of the town, will pay more, and the portion of the 65% that's under will pay less. So my problem is that I don't see this as something that what I think was the initial motivation for this, which was to tax people that don't live here more. Seems to me that they will be, that burden, that excess burden will be shared by a certain portion of the people that are the wealthier aspect in the town that do live in their houses, as well as the ones that are simply, buying investment properties. I don't know if that's the simple explanation, but I'm going to ask at the assessors tomorrow. And I
Yep.
think if that's the case, then that's a simple wrap up of what's happening.
And it's not just the wealthy, it could be people that inherited a house that's valued above the rate point too, so.
And Mr. Chair, just one note regarding the rate that was used, that's an example rate for the discussion. What the actual rate would be isn't determined yet. That would come from the tax recapitulation process that we go through. And then, of course, the tax classification hearing. So just, I wouldn't, the 12 rate was an example, not the rate that would go in.
All right, thank you. And Nathaniel, I'm not doing a second comment about, I'm not doing Conservation Commission. We had an update on it. So if it's not about that, I'll take it, and I'll take Laura right now.
Yes, thank you for taking comments. I did have a question for Mitch. I wanted to know who has been checking on Conservation Commission projects that were in the works, that were already happening for monitoring. And then I also wanted to know what steps have been taken. I assume that applications and mail has been coming to you. I want to know what steps are taken after you receive those applications. Are they being stamped with a received date, which of course would trigger 21 days for opening a hearing? So I just wondered if you could address that, because I know I've heard this from you, Chairman Brackett, that you're all taking care of everything with the help of DEP. And I just can't find anywhere in the documentation how that's handled. I see how it would be handled if there was no commission, but there actually is. So I just can't quite find in the literature what the process is. So could you please address that? Who is monitoring projects that are ongoing for making sure that everything is safe and things are done correctly in the field, and also because that does need to happen periodically, that has to be checked to make sure, for example, there's siltation protection for erosion control, all of those things. And I don't see that happening, and I have some concerns about that, and we want our town to be healthy and strong. And then just what is your process actually been for when those applications have arrived?
As you said before, DEP will take it after 21 days. When it arrives after 21 days, they have the right to go to DEP. And that's, if you're seeing other problems around town, please report them back to us. If you have more questions, we'll gladly set up a meeting and walk through the process.
Okay.
I'm not gonna get into in this meeting and back and forth. Applicants know when we talk to them, when they reach out to us after 21 days, if they don't hear anything, they can move on to DEP, which I think DEP has said they've received a few. So, if not, if you have more concerns, I'll gladly set up a meeting and we can get talking about it.
All right.
Any more public comment? All right, seeing none, I think we're going to go into executive session now, and I believe Selectwoman Donnelly, do you have the motion?
I move that the board enter into executive session for the following. Executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Stephen Abel versus Town of Rockport et al., MCA D docket number 22BE M00744. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares, votes may be taken, will not reconvene in public session. Executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Glenn McLeod et al. Versus Town of Rockport et al., Essex Superior Court, docket number 2177 CV 00077. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares, votes may be taken, will not reconvene in public session. Executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, to discuss strategy with respect to negotiations with non-union personnel, police chief, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body and the chair so declare, votes may be taken, will not reconvene in public session. Executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Rousseau et al. Versus Town of Rockport, United States District Court, CA number 1:22-CV-10331-JGD. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares, votes may be taken, will not reconvene in public session. Executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, Local 1679, AFSCME General and Supervisors Units. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares, votes may be taken, will not reconvene in public session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, by not entering into executive session, it will be detrimental to the town's bargaining and litigating positions. The board will not reconvene in open session. Roll call vote. Selectwoman Wilkinson.
Aye.
Selectman Murphy.
Aye.
Selectman Lilia.
Aye.
Selectwoman Donnelly.
Aye.
And Selectman Brackett votes aye. Motion carries. We are entering into executive session.
At this time, the public portion of the Board of Selectmen's meeting has ended. We ask that you please exit the meeting at this time. The board will not be reconvening in public session.